Hey guys, how's it going? Like many of you, after I saw Dragonball Z Ressurection F, I felt that, it could have been better. In particular, it could have been better in comparison to Battle of Gods. So, what I'm going to be doing is, this is going to be the first installment of Dragonball Discussions. And this time I'm going to be talking about how I would change Revival F, Resurrection F, Forgotten F, whatever you want to call it. So, I felt that this movie had a lot of potential, but there are a lot of areas where it fell short. I want to basically go through the movie and say what I would change about it, and just assume that the things that I don't mention are things that either I wouldn't change or that I forgot to mention. So, just keep that in mind. Okay, so in sequence, the first thing I would change is how Frieza acquires the golden form. I really feel that ever since I heard he simply trains in order to achieve the golden form, that isn't something that I really, that's not something that I like. The reason is because, it took every other character years and years in order to achieve the kind of power that they currently have. But Frieza only trains for a few months and he can get that power. I don't like that because, it undermines the whole value of training and whatnot to get strong. So, how I would explain it is probably something along the lines of maybe Frieza learns about some sort of artifact. They get an artifact that's shaped like a carrot, if anyone gets the reference. Frieza eats it and it gives him the ability to gain a lot of power very quickly. And a lot of people might think this is contradictory, but maybe they just find it, because keep in mind, Frieza doesn't control the whole galaxy. Because if he did, he would control Earth, for example. But he controls a good portion of the galaxy, so I'm sure that there's still a lot of planets that he still needs to conquer. After he eats this mystical carrot, or whatever you want to call it, it's the space carrot, he gains immense amount of power. Not only that, but it actually gives him the ability to gain massive amounts of strength very quickly. And I think this would be a lot easier to explain, kind of like how the Elder Kai unlocked Gohan's hidden potential. At least they made it somewhat reasonable. Like, he didn't just get the power just from training. He got it from having his hidden power unlocked. It should be sort of the same thing for Frieza. Like, he should get some sort of outside help, in a way, in order to get as powerful as he becomes in this movie. So the next thing I would change is I would take out the 1.3 million line. I really hate that line. The reason is because, as a Dragon Ball fan, I know the characters get much, much stronger since then. You could argue that final form Frieza and the Frieza arc, as well as Super Saiyan Goku, that they're in the hundreds of millions in terms of power. So 1.3 million just doesn't make any sense. And that would lowball the character. And another thing I would do is I would also take out the line where they say Shisami and Tagoma are actually, they rival Zarbon and Doria in their peak. I would take that out because, if that were true, then Piccolo should have had no problems with Shisami. But obviously, it looks like they're on par pretty much. And it takes Super Saiyan Gohan to one-shot him. So the way I would explain it is, either I would just take out that line, and so we don't know how strong they really are, or maybe they would be as strong as Cell. Well, then Gohan shouldn't be able to one-shot him, but still, I could see how he could go toe-to-toe with Piccolo. Because even if Piccolo hadn't been training, I still doubt he'd be so weak that he'd be as weak as Zarbon and Dodoria. That's something else I would change. I didn't like those lines. So, another thing I would change is I would have at least one line in the movie explaining how Goku and Vegeta achieved Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan. And the reason is because they don't go through it in the movie, they just show it later on. And at least when they transform, they can at least say it there. But from what I'm aware of, you have to go to outside sources to find out how exactly they reach the form. And especially Vegeta. How did Vegeta achieve that form when he didn't even go through the Super Saiyan God ritual? So I think what would have helped the movie a little bit more is if, at least later on in the movie, they explain exactly how Vegeta got Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan. Because we didn't see him go through the ritual at all. At least Goku, we could say, well, okay, he went through the ritual, so he could train just to get stronger. He can train to control the God form, but Vegeta never went through the ritual. I mean, he participated in it, but he wasn't the recipient of that power. Maybe they could explain it as anyone who participates in the ritual, that they have some residual God energy in them. Like that would kind of make sense because, you know, they were linked at a time. But they never mentioned that, not even the outside sources to my knowledge. Or if they did, maybe I missed it. Another thing I would change is I would show some of Frieza's training. In particular, I'd show him struggling a bit with training because this is the first time he's done it. And think about it. This would actually make sense if he struggled training. Simply because he said that he's never struggled with training in his life. And the reason is because, you know, he never needed to train. So basically he never needed to train because he was always powerful enough to defeat any opponent that would dare challenge him, pretty much. I mean, obviously he was afraid of Beerus, but other than him. And also I'd show a gradual build up to achieving the the Golden Frieza form. Because, you know, just him achieving it, while it was sort of shocking, in a way it wasn't because a lot of us saw the trailers and stuff. But even if we hadn't seen the trailers, it still, in my opinion, wasn't worth it. You know, the build up to Super Saiyan God form as well as the Golden form. So I would have just shown the gradual build up to the Golden Frieza form. Another thing I would have shown is more of Goku and Vegeta's training, because they did show it, but I felt they could have expanded on a few things. Like they could have had a little more interaction between Goku and Vegeta while they were training with Whis, you know, going a little bit more into their rivalry. I mean, we know about the rivalry, but they were taking, you know, shots at each other, but I felt that they could have expanded upon that a little bit, sort of sell the rivalry better. And another thing I would have changed is I would have had Frieza, after he finished his training, obviously go to Earth, which he did, but what I would have changed in particular about that is that I would have had more soldiers that are as strong as Shisami and Tagoma, but I would have made Shisami and Tagoma a lot stronger. I also would have had the Z Warriors fight the Frieza army. However, there'd be a couple of soldiers that, like I said before, will be strong enough to contend with Gohan, Piccolo, Krillin, and Tien, since they're the strongest ones of the team before, you know, Goku and Vegeta showed back up. I would have had at least one soldier fight, you know, the strongest one would fight Gohan, the second strongest would fight Piccolo, and the other two would fight Krillin and Tien, and they would give all of them trouble. Like, I think that would be very interesting to watch. You know, it'd be almost like when the Ginyu Force fought Vegeta, Krillin, and Gohan. And I would also have the Z Warriors winning, except, you know, Frieza punches Super Saiyan Gohan instead of base Gohan, because, you know, him punching base Gohan isn't that impressive, since base Gohan not training isn't really that strong. I mean, sure, he'd be stronger than Frieza during the Frieza arc, at least the base form Frieza during the Frieza arc, but he still wouldn't be that impressive. So if they really wanted to show off Frieza's strength, they should have had him punch Super Saiyan Gohan so that Piccolo revives him and whatnot. When Goku and Vegeta come back to Earth, although I like the interaction between Beerus and Frieza, you know, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that Whis and Beerus should probably stay on their homeworld, and the reason is because, you know, with them there, that sort of I feel dulls the sense of danger that I complained about in my review. Perhaps one thing in order to sell that this is a very dangerous fight would be to leave them, you know, on the world. So I also would have had Goku fight Frieza. They both transform, but the difference is when Goku gets blasted in the chest, I would have Frieza do it instead of Sorbet. And simply put, I would have that happen because as a Super Saiyan God, I find it ridiculous that a common laser could pierce Goku even if he's off his guard, considering that even if he's off his guard, a bullet can't pierce Goku. And I would feel even a weakened Frieza with a Death Beam or something could probably pierce Goku's chest. And, you know, we know that when Vegeta got pierced, he didn't die right away. All he would have needed is a senzu bean and he'd probably be fine. Then, when Vegeta took over the fight, I probably would have had him. I probably would have had the fight to be a lot longer, to be honest, because I felt that the initial fight, what was it, like a minute long? I mean, that's way too short. I mean, if you actually watch the fight, it's pretty much like a minute long, whereas the fight between Goku and Vegeta was quite a bit longer. It wasn't even close. However, one big difference that I would have aside from the fight being longer is that Vegeta's weakness of overthinking his actions and having too much tension. Like, I would make that more prominent because that is mentioned, but that's not shown in the movie, and that would be good for developing Vegeta's character. So, for example, maybe Frieza picks up on this and he makes Vegeta angry, avoiding his attacks, and he also nearly kills Vegeta, perhaps. Then finally, Goku and Vegeta get a senzu beans, and they decide to work together to destroy Frieza, mostly because they have to. And at this point, they end up killing Frieza because they actually work together like Beerus suggested. Well, Beerus and we suggested. And they finally kill Frieza. Then finally, either when Frieza's about to die or when Frieza's in hell, Frieza gets some character development as well. I know this is kind of weird for some of you, but what I would like to see is Frieza realizing that he did not properly train and regulate his golden form, and the audience learned that Frieza's weakness was that he was too eager to fight Goku, and also that but kind of like Goku said, he was burning through more power than his body could supply. So he realizes that and he is even more upset. So that's basically all the stuff that I have for how I would change Revival of F. So ultimately I feel that this movie had a lot of potential, but it fell short on a lot of different areas. Now sure, this might not have improved the plot that much, but I definitely think these suggestions would have improved the movie overall. This could have been better for development because there were seeds for development for Goku, Vegeta, and Frieza, but they weren't really executed, unlike in Battle of Gods where Goku's development was executed pretty well. Here, if they had changed things in the way that I suggested, that all three of them would have gotten development, and this movie would have been better in character as compared to Battle of Gods. So, that's pretty much about it. Those are all my suggestions for how I would improve Dragon Ball Z Ressurection F. And let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys later.